We all search for that spark which fuels our desire to fully engage in our lives. We look for the courage to experience moments where we can come alive instead of watching life pass us by. You're listening to The Front Row Factor, leaving fear and insecurity behind by exploring stories of top performers that are living life in the front row. Get ready to stand up, step up, and live it up with your host, John Vroman.
Hey everybody, John here. Thanks for joining. Today I'm talking with Pat Flynn of smartpassiveincome.com. This is a family guy who's making an incredible living online and making a huge positive impact in the world. Now, this is a guy whose podcast has been in the top 10 business podcasts since 2011 and has been downloaded 25 million times. So after being laid off back in 2008 from an architecture firm, he decided to work from home. So when he got some traction with his online businesses, he started to blog about it and share what was working and what wasn't. This guy's totally open. He's authentic, he's genuine, and totally transparent, including, by the way, posting his monthly earnings on his site, which last month topped $175,000. You do not need to stop and rewind. That is right, $175K. What's great about Pat, though, is he's not just about the money. He's about impact. He's about authenticity. He's literally one of the good guys. On the show today, I asked Pat about his book, Will It Fly?, which just became, by the way, a Wall Street Journal bestseller. We dig into all sorts of stuff, nuggets from the book. I ask him, what's the best chapter if you could only read one? And I get into his most productive hours of the day, his meditation practice. And, we even get into some of how he almost made a huge mistake writing the book, but how his mastermind group pulled him out from the tailspin before it was too late. And parents, there's a little nugget in there for you too, where we talk about Pat's children's education. And Pat's really passionate about education, and this is a really fun conversation. So there's so much here. Enjoy the show with Pat Flynn. All right, front row, I'm here with Pat Flynn. So excited, Pat. Good morning, or now good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, the clock struck past noon, so we're in afternoon now.
That's it, man. I'm so glad you're with us today. Thanks for being here. And dude, I'm holding a copy of Will It Fly in my hand.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I was on the course online that accompanies this book, and I'm blown away, man. I'm literally in Starbucks this morning having such a great experience. And it seems to be typical when I'm exposed to your stuff where I'm both inspired and a little jealous because I'm like, oh, that's so brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? Oh, that's amazing. So, dude, just thanks for being such a great leader. Thanks for providing such amazing content, inspiration for so many. You've got a huge fan base out there, and the front row community I know is exposed to you, and we just love you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm paying it forward from all the people who helped me when I first got started and got laid off in 2008, and then built my own business from there. So, just doing what I can to help others who are in a similar situation. That's
great. Now, I'm going to ask you what I ask all my great friends, Pat, which is, dude, give me the highlight reel. I want to know the brag session. I want you just to be, I know you're a humble guy, but I want you to tell me all the great things happening in life right now. And I know the book will be part of that. At least I'm going to guess that it is. But, dude, it could be anything. Just tell me about what's happening in life and what you're excited about.
Yeah, most importantly, and the coolest thing I think is just how much I'm able to be at home with my kids still. I've been working for myself for 8 years, and my son's off to kindergarten now, and he and I and my wife and my daughter, we all go together every single morning to drop him off. And it's just, I feel so blessed that I have that opportunity to do that, and also go with everybody to pick him up too. And when my daughter goes to school, a lot of looks at school, how are you able to go with how are you all here at the same time every single day? And it's because I've built this business around the way I want to live, not the other way around.
Totally.
So I'm very blessed for that. Business-wise, things are going extremely well. My podcast, the Smart Passive Income Podcast, top 10 business podcasts on iTunes since 2011.
Woo!
And it's just passed 25 million downloads this past week, which
I'm
really excited about. Yeah, it's insane. I record this from my home office in San Diego, and it's been listened to over 25 million times. It's insane. And the book that I just came out with, Will It Fly?, that came out February 1st, and I'm very happy to say that it's doing very well. It became a Wall Street Journal bestseller as a self-published author, which is apparently pretty difficult to do. I didn't even know if it was possible, but we did it, and I'm super stoked, and it's inspiring a lot of self-published authors out there. And then finally, I'm just, I'm in a great state of mind. I'm living every day like the way I want to live it, and trying to change other people's lives at the same time.
Pat, that's so great, man. Congrats to you. And
thank you.
When you wrote this book, when I first heard about the book, I thought, oh, dude, you hit it. This is exactly the book that I need. This is something that I struggle with, is picking which project to focus attention and energy on. So, man, you wrote the book that was perfect for me. And I'm grateful for that.
Well, thank you.
I devoured it. Literally, I just sat down and it was a page turner. So love the examples, and I can relate to it as well. I have 2 young boys, and especially the paper, the way it kicks off with the paper airplane story. It's great. Can you give us, for those who maybe haven't heard the story yet, can you just give us a little bit about the book, maybe how the idea was sparked for you, and a little bit about and around the concept of the book?
Yeah, so the book, it's called Will It Fly? The subtitle is How to Test Your Next Business Idea So You Don't Waste Your Time and Money. And that kind of says it all right there, because a lot of people, we have these great ideas and we often don't act on them because we're just not sure if they're going to work or not. And of course, our time is limited. We want to work on stuff that's going to pay off for us. And a lot of times we're just more comfortable and complacent with where we're at now, and we don't take any action. Or you take action, but you do it too quickly without doing the proper research and without validation.
Yeah.
And then you hit a brick wall and you think you're a complete failure and this isn't for you, when that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
And the story that I start with in the book, which you mentioned, it involves my son. On his third birthday, I showed him how to fold a paper airplane, and he was so excited after seeing it fly that he wanted to create his own, of course, like any boy would want to do with like their daddy does. So he started folding this piece of paper, and then before I could even teach him how, he just started folding it because he saw me go through the motions, and then he created this thing that looked more like a boat than a plane, really. And he threw it, and I knew it wasn't going to fly, and he threw it again, and it just didn't go anywhere. And then he said, I don't like paper airplanes. And I was like, no, like you can't, like your paper airplane career can't end like this. So right. I was like, no, okay, let's sit down and watch me fold. And it's a simple dart design one that I showed him how to do. And I helped him a little bit along the way, but then he threw that, and it kind of just opened up his whole world. Like, oh my gosh, wow. And then he's built like hundreds of paper airplanes since then. And now he's like trying new designs, and he understands that failure is a part of the process. And the whole point of the story is that's how a lot of people get into these ideas that they have. They go and they rush into it. They do it because it's exciting and they see somebody else do the same thing, but they don't take the necessary steps in the beginning just to do a little bit of research.
That's right.
To make sure that it's something that's actually going to fly. Like, does it have wings or not? And, there's a lot of great business books out there about how to find ideas. There's a lot of great ones out there about how to grow your idea and build your business, build your empire. But there was that nothing really in between that was like, okay, well, you get this idea. How do you make sure if it's something that you should spend all this time, money, and effort on? And that's why I wanted to write about here. And I knew this was going to be a great topic because, again, I'm writing partly for my younger self, but also my audience more than anything asks me more than any other question, how do I know if what I'm working on is worth my time? Because as entrepreneurs, you invest time up front. You're not trading time for money anymore, which is the good thing. But in the beginning, it's hard because you're trading time for nothing sometimes just to build, and you're not even sure if it's actually going to work out. And a lot of times that just stops people because of that fear.
Yeah. Yeah. If somebody picked up your book today, what chapter would you tell them to read if they could only read one? I mean, is it obvious to say chapter 1? But if they could only read one chapter, is there one step that you think is like, man, this is so critical, so key?
Man, that is a great question. Do you mind if I borrow that question for a feature?
Please.
That's such an awesome question. It would be I think it's actually chapter 2, which is the first experiment or the first thought experiment that you do, which is called the airport test.
Yeah.
And that one's really important because it sets you up to figure out, well, why are you doing what you're doing? What are your goals? What are you here for?
Yes.
Why are you doing all this work? And once you figure out what those goals are, then all the other decisions that you make in the future are related to that.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the address you put in your GPS, so you can figure out which direction you're going. And unfortunately, we don't have a business GPS that tells us every step along the way. You kind of have to figure out. But as long as you know which direction you're going, you know that if you get off path, you can get on path.
Yeah.
And the analogy I like to use relative to Will It Fly is the airplane analogy, where it's, you get into an airplane, you're flying it, and it's exciting and it's cool, and you're up in the air and you can go wherever you want for a while. But eventually, if you don't know where you want to go, you're going to waste gas, you're going to lose gas, and then you'll be grounded again. And you might end up further away from where you actually should be. So that's how, again, like a lot of people build their businesses in that way. But I know a lot of successful entrepreneurs, for example, who are incredibly successful on paper, like there's a ton of clients, a lot of money, great business, employees, and you might think that their life is great, but deep down they're not happy because they've climbed the top of a ladder, but they're up the wrong ladder.
Yeah.
And it's because because they had an idea and they went with it and they did well, but they rushed into it without thinking about, well, how does this actually fit into my life? And so that's why the airport test, which the book will explain exactly how to do that, really is the one I would recommend more than any other.
Yeah. And I just want to give my take on this too, because, so I've read a lot and, I've done these exercises. I've been through lots of personal growth programs. And when I got to this piece, I was like, oh, I think I've done something similar to that. And I just want to share that, so I turned 40, recently. And, this has been a 20-year journey for me, growing and learning, right? So this is coming from experience. And I'm sharing this with our audience is similar to my situation. And I will tell you this, Pat, this exercise was awesome. When I sat down and I did the 5 years ahead, write out, the whole time machine, which I thought was perfect because I do know that you're a fan of Back to the Future. I was like,
there's some Easter eggs.
He got it in there great. So to me, this was like, I almost did the exercise reluctantly. But when I did it, I was like, wow, that's so powerful. And it was profound, the impact that it had on me, even though I've done exercises similar to this in the past. I think that's it speaks to the power of doing something even once a year or once every other year in your life, or doing it again sometime, because you're a different person when you're doing these exercises. Yeah. And it's just powerful.
Well, thank you for that. You're not the first person to mention how they saw, one of the first chapters is an exercise. And a lot of times you see these exercises in books and you're like, really? Like, I got to do this now? Like, I just wanted to read, right? But this book isn't meant to read. It's meant to do.
That's right.
And the cool thing about this is these exercises, I actually do them along with you. So as you're reading along, I mean, John, you saw that. I filled out my form and you saw everything that's there about me and my life and what my goals were too. So I lead the way. I got to kind of give you an example to start off with, and then you can kind of do it on your own. So I'm glad that you did that, and I'm glad you got a lot out of that.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was awesome. And also page 95, this is your post. Quick question for those of you who know me pretty well. Thank you in advance for taking a moment to answer. I'll ask you what you feel is a unique ability, perhaps a superpower that I possess. What would you say that superpower is? So I read that. And dude, I got to thank you because, again, I was inspired. Last night I went on Facebook and I posted this reluctantly. And when I got the answers back, dude, I was blown away.
It wasn't what you expected, right?
Dude, it wasn't what I expected.
Yeah, that's what always happens. It's amazing.
Here's what's crazy. And this is what's great. I told myself, I know exactly what's coming. Like, I'm going to do this to honor Pat and the book, and I'm going to play. And I was blown away. So I just want to tell you that, I've spent $100,000 on my own personal growth. I've done similar things, but this is powerful, man. And it's really great. And I thank you for that. So this has been quite a journey. I've done the book. I haven't just read it. I would say to anybody listening, you've got to get online and do the companion guide or
companion course or companion guide. Yeah, which it's free. The funny thing about that is, a lot of authors give bonuses to go along with the book and whatnot, but I wanted to bring something different. And I got inspired to do it in this way from The Walking Dead, which is one of my favorite shows.
All right, tell me more.
Because you're like, what? I don't get the connection.
Yeah.
Before every episode of The Walking Dead on AMC, you hear the voiceover guys say, go to walkingdeadstorysync.com. And then for each episode that you watch, while you're watching it, you can actually see on your computer all these really cool, amazing things that kind of take it to the next level, show you behind the scenes and interesting things that happen in certain scenes that you're watching. So I wanted to do the same thing with a book.
Yeah.
And because there's exercises and worksheets and also a lot of things that I explain in here that would be better explained through video, I thought this was perfect. So the companion course is outlined in the same way, in the same chapters, and you go into the chapters. And my favorite part, and I wish every other author would do this, is the links are there. All the links mentioned in the book are clickable right there, very easy to get. Because one thing I know, when I read a book and there's a bunch of links, I don't know if I should scramble for a notebook or if I should highlight them just to make sure I remember them. It's difficult sometimes. So I'm glad you're enjoying the companion course too.
Dude, here's what I find is that, I do a lot of speaking, and I've heard people say that you only have X amount of time with somebody's attention before you've got to switch it up. You got to show them a slide or a joke, or you got to do something with the audience to engage them and interact. And I found that to be true, and I really work at that. What I found was interesting about your book is that when I sat at my computer and I had the book open and I had the exercises going and I had the companion course there, I found that it gave me just the right amount of switching my attention, out of the book onto a screen, that it almost kept me more engaged. I could read longer because of that. And I thought that was really neat.
That is really cool. Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah. Pat, has there been an unexpected positive surprise of the book? Has there been something that you're like, I didn't see that coming? Like I knew people you'd probably enjoy this. My community told me they had this problem. I knew that this was going to be a solution for them. Has there been anything that's been like, wow, I didn't see that coming?
Well, there's one thing, or there's a number of things actually. I mean, the first one, which is a more of a selfish one, is that it got to the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, which I was not expecting at all. I thought that when I made the decision to do self-publish, that I was basically saying, I'm not caring about the lists right now. That can come later. But to get on that with a self-published book is really cool. And the other thing is the byproduct of that, though. It was the inspiration that apparently a lot of other authors are seeing from me writing this book and doing it all on my own. Because there's a lot of great authors out there who are doing it self-published, but they often feel like they're losing out on opportunities because they don't get to work with a traditional publisher, or the traditional publishers don't even care to talk to them, or they've been rejected with some of their proposals and whatnot. And so I have this Kindle group on Amazon that has sort of followed my progress for the longest time. And a lot of them are just very encouraged by the results that I'm getting. And again, because of the fact that I'm just a regular guy who just took action and seeing great results. And now there's all these amazing opportunities that are coming my way that I've never thought I would be thinking of. Partly because I just was so into writing the manuscript at the time, but also because this is my first time going down this path. I have another ebook, but this is the first time I've written sort of the real nonfiction, big time sort of business type book. And now I'm getting emails from Russia, Japan, they're like, we see your book up in the rankings. Like, we want to buy the rights to it. And I'm freaking out because I don't know what to do. Wow. And so I'm actually in the middle of talking to an agent just to help me through some of these processes, and talking to author attorneys. And I'm entering this whole new world. And it's really interesting and fun and exciting. I'm meeting a lot of cool new people. But I think the coolest thing is just what this book represents for authors. Yeah. One of the other cool things that I'm about to do is, there's a lot of publishers who want to buy the rights to this, and I'm not going to sell it. This is my own. This is self-published.
Cool.
But because of that, it makes it a little harder to get into actual bookstores like Barnes & Noble. But I know it's possible. And so one thing I'm going to experiment with in the next couple months is just to see if there's a way I can angle my way into Barnes & Noble with this book as a self-published author, and just kind of see what that experience is like. And like I always do, I always report back to my audience and share how that goes. And if it can happen, I think it's going to be pretty cool for a lot of people to watch.
Yeah. That's so cool. Pat, I'm going to go to the creative process of this book. And, I mentioned to you leading up to this show that one of the metaphors we use is this back row to front row experience of life, where we go from a spectator to a participant, where we go from thinking about something to taking action on it. And one of my questions for you is that in the realm of taking action, when you're creating as an artist, right? Mm-hmm. How do you balance copying from others? That whole concept, steal like an artist. I don't know if you're familiar with that, right? Yeah. It's like taking all these ideas and mashing them together and making your own. How do you balance the idea of taking people's frameworks, taking people's ideas, taking something that's existed, and how much you make of your own? Because I wrestle with this. So I'm asking selfishly, I know that some of my community wrestles with this as well. Is like, how do I know when to look for patterns, and how do I know when to create like an artist and totally be an innovator? When am I taking somebody's idea too much, and how much of it do I need to change to make my own? Did you wrestle with that? How have you come to resolution?
Yeah, I think that's something all of us who are creators wrestle with, because when you really think about it, nothing is absolutely 100% new. Right. So there's a number of ways to make it your own, though. And for me, one of the big things is whenever I get an idea from somebody else, I always do what I can to share credit, to make sure to give credit to the people to where it came from. So that's why in the book, actually, I give credit to as many places as I can. And I've gotten some comments from people that were like, Pat, this is your book. You got to stop
crediting everybody.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, it just makes me feel more comfortable doing that. So that's one thing you could do. But another thing is adding your own voice and your own opinion on something that's always going to be 100% yours. Yeah. And so if you share something that somebody else does, but you take it to the next step and it's something new and unique and creative, that's yours. Yeah. And go with that. And you have to be confident with that too. The moment you start to do something that is your own, but then you kind of hold back a little bit, you're not serving your audience in the best way that you can. You're not getting it out there into the world in the way that you should. So it is a constant battle, I think. And another thing that has been really helpful is throughout the whole process of this book, I have to give credit a lot to my mastermind groups. I'm in 2 different mastermind groups that meet weekly, both of them. And they've been with me throughout this whole process to see where it was, to in the works of it and in the trenches, to now in the marketing part of it. They've been there all the way. And I've been using them as a sounding board all the way through just to make sure that this book was, the way that it would be best representative of me and my brand, but the most helpful to other people too.
Yeah. Can you expand on a little bit of how that mastermind group supported you? Like, in what ways? Did they ask you questions? Can you think of specific moments where that group stepped up in a way that you're like, that was a game changer?
Oh, I mean, the biggest game changer was there was this one meeting we did. It was an hour and a half, and it was all me. What we do in these meetings is we either present something that we're working on or come up with a specific question, and then the whole group kind of brainstorms together to help that one person out. It's very much a Knights of the Round Table type thing, and every week that another person gets into the what's called the hot seat. Well, this was my hot seat, and this was about 4 or 5 months into the writing process, and I had the structure of the book down. I talked about what I wanted the book to be about and who I wanted it to serve. They knew that already, but the big question was what the title was going to be, because I hadn't come up with the title yet, and we had spent the entire hour and a half trying to figure that out and brainstorming and coming up with different ideas and angles, because it couldn't just be a book about validation, and it needed some sort of framework around it. And so we came up with all these ideas, and it was Roderick Russell from Remarkably Human, who's in one of my mastermind groups. He actually swallows swords and does shows around the world.
Dude, I just met him. Yeah.
Oh, really?
I just saw him at Michael Port's event. He did.
Oh, yeah.
He did sword swallowing on stage.
He's amazing. He's an amazing guy. And you might be wondering, well, how is that person helpful to you in your mastermind group? Like, does he teach you how to do sword swallowing? And I've actually asked him how to do it, but he won't show us because that would be dangerous. But what he does contribute to the group really a lot is that stage presence and the creativity, right, and the just how to phrase something in a way that an audience will respond. And so he was very smart in a way where he was like, Pat, you're writing a book here that's more than just launching a product. It's making sure that product will actually continue to survive for years after it's launched. It's almost like, the launch is just the beginning of it, but that's what everybody talks about. What about the flight of it? Will it fly? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. It was literally 1 or 2 minutes left in the call before we all had to hang up. And that's where I remember the story with my son to set up everything. That's where the whole framework for the book came out, where, the flight simulator and all this stuff, it just really molded everything and glued everything together. So that was one big moment. Another one was, actually, this was before that moment. I was really struggling with the writing a lot. And it was because when I had approached writing this book, I tried to, maybe this was not intentional, but I ended up approaching it this way. I tried to be like Malcolm Gladwell, essentially. I tried to write like him because he's one of my favorite authors. And I tried to do all this research. I did do a lot of research. I went to psychological magazines. I read all these business studies and all this stuff that, I would imagine that he read too, that he could use that data to support his points, which is like my favorite part of his books, is he has data to back up everything. And so I wrote a couple chapters of this book and shared it with my mastermind group. Then we all got together in a hot seat. And by far, like both mastermind groups, which have separate people, they all said, all people in those groups said, this does not sound like you at all.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a huge eye opener for me. And then we started discussing and, basically got to the point where I realized that I just have to be me.
Yeah.
And I just have to write like I write on my blog. And I treated the book differently than the blog, which was the big problem and why that happened that way. But once I started breaking up the chapters in my head, thinking about them like just blog posts, it became much easier. My own stories came out and just injected themselves into the copy or into the content. And it just started to flow from there. So that was the second example of how the mastermind groups have helped me.
So brilliant. We call that who's in your front row in the front row community. We talk about the power of who we put in close proximity to us. I can't tell you how many times, and I know you know this as well, that the mastermind concept shows up. Do you have an opinion, Pat, onto when is it time to pay to get into a mastermind group, and when do you just form your own? And do you have, like, when somebody comes to you and talks to you about mastermind groups, do you have a short, like, hey, here's 3 things to consider, or here's what I would say is like a starting place for that?
Yeah, I mean, typically when people ask me about mastermind groups, I direct them to a YouTube video of a presentation I did about mastermind groups, which lays out the whole foundation. But,
perfect. We can link to that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What's it titled?
Called How to Make the Most of Your Mastermind Group or something. I'll give you the link out on Skype.
Okay, cool.
Just to make sure we give you the direct.
Yeah.
They're at. So anyway, with the mastermind groups, I mean, I've actually never done a paid mastermind group.
Right.
All my groups have been with people who I respect and look up to, but are also in the same kind of level that I'm at.
Yeah.
Up or down a couple degrees here or there. And that's important because I've been in groups before where there are people who are way up there, like A-list. Like if you consider yourself a 5 out of 10, wherever you're at in business, you consider yourself a 5 out of 10. If you have a 10 in your group, everybody's going to be asking that person questions. They're going to be not feeling like they're getting a lot of value out of it because everybody else is way not where they're at. Mm-hmm. Or if you go the other way around, if you have like a 2 or a 1 and everybody else is at your level, then that person's going to just be not really pulling their weight, I guess you could say. So 1 or 2 degrees above or below where you're at is a really, really good core group, and meeting consistently. And I would recommend that you would also meet these people in person first. If you ever get a chance to go to an event or or some sort of function where there's people in person that you can meet and connect with, that's really where you can understand if there's a vibe there, because you're going to be talking to these people every week or more. You're going to be brutally honest with them, and they're going to become your best friends, and they're going to tell you exactly what you need to hear. Not often what you want to hear sometimes, but sometimes just what you need to hear.
Yeah.
And so I would recommend if you're looking to get into one, I would start one. You know, it's a lot easier to start one than to get into one that exists, because each group has their own different climate and environment and process for adding new people.
Pat, I know you're great at being vulnerable and open and, just sharing. You're totally transparent. It's one of the things that you stand on. Has there ever been a moment when somebody has shared with you something that was really difficult for you to hear? Like they were totally honest with you and you're like, oh, that stung a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's happened a number of times, and I appreciate that because that's what I need to hear.
Yeah. There
was a time when, I think this was in 2011, my income started to really get going in terms of how much I was making, and I got to a point where I wanted to do coaching on something because that's what everybody else was doing. And I got into coaching for this thing called niche sites, which was at the time sort of the big thing that people were doing, starting these websites based off of keyword research. And I had a partner, my partner, I won't name him, but he and I were working together to create this course. And I had a number of people call me out and tell me that I was working with the wrong person, even though I had spent considerable amounts of time, befriending this person, talking to this person. I didn't know that this person had done some things that he had done online before. And that was brought to my attention from mainly my audience. And once that happened, I actually decided to continue working with him because I felt like I had a better relationship with him than they did. They only saw what was online. Well, that's when a number of my mastermind group members were like, Pat, I understand why you decided to do that, but you really need to think about who it is that you're affecting or what this represents when you do this. I wouldn't recommend actually getting into business with this person. And it was hard for me to hear because I actually was good friends with this person, but I didn't not stay friends with him. I stayed friends with him, but from a business point of view, I actually was just very honest with him about what was going on, and I thought about it, and it was the better decision not to work with him. And then that whole coaching course, which was actually we spent hours and hours building, it was already ready to be sold. We just had to turn on the switch. It never got turned on, and I'm so thankful for that because it would have put me into the realm of or I could have seen it put me into the realm of more quote internet marketer, that the kind of internet marketer that gives you the bad taste in your mouth when you hear that term.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's something I want to stay completely away from. And I just didn't see it.
Yep, absolutely. Pat, this might be a little bit of a gear shift here, but what's a question? You do a lot of these interviews. You interview a lot of people. When you're on the receiving end of the questions, what's a question that you wish people would ask you more often?
Well, I wish they would ask me more about productivity, because that's something I feel like I'm really good at. And I think people can see that, but they don't really ask me about it very much because I think a lot of people feel like they have their own ways of doing things. For me, productivity and optimization and getting into the tools and all those sorts of things, I get really excited about because I always am conscious about what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, and how it's contributing to what I'm supposed to do. And I have, optimized my time as much as possible to be able to get the most out of the time that I spend working and make sure that I give my family the most time that I can give them. Now, I feel like if I waste time while working, or if I don't do work in the best way possible, then I'm actually taking time away from my own family. That's how I approach it. And that forces me to really think about the systems and the automation and what I can do to better improve those workflows in my business.
In the last 12 months, what are, a couple of the biggest or best decisions you've made that have helped you be more productive?
One of them is I've hired a editorial manager in my business. That is somebody who helps me make sure that through all the legs of Smart Passive Income, that is the blog, the podcast, SPI TV, Ask Pat, that all the content for those are thought about ahead of time, planned ahead of time, and even produced ahead of time. And that has made it so much easier for me to stay on top of the bigger projects that I need to be working on. We wanted to make sure that we had all those things in place so that I could have time spent to spend on the book, for example, and launching the book. And then later this year, it's going to be the audiobook and then the courses and all those sorts of things. So having somebody else manage the content and thinking ahead in terms of, oh, this would actually be good for the launch of this. And, actually somebody from an outside perspective who sees bird's eye view, all the parts together. I mean, it's so hard when you're working so into your own brand to see what it's like from the outside sometimes. And it's really great to have other people on the outside helping you.
For sure.
So that was one person that has really helped. Another thing that really helped me was getting very, very diligent with scheduling everything. So I use my calendar for everything in my business, including when I'm on social media, when I'm doing emails, and that's it. Because email, for one thing, was sucking up my life.
Yeah.
And, I hired an assistant for that a couple of years ago, and I've been even more adamant about making it even more, or taking email out of my life even more while continuing to help others. And that is making sure that I have specific moments during the day when I check email, and I do not check email outside of those times. I think really what those creates are boundaries for me, and understanding what those boundaries are and knowing what I'm going to do ahead of time has been really helpful. Instead of acting or instead of being reactive, I guess you could say, I'm being more proactive in controlling my time.
Pat, your kids are turning 18 years old. All right, we've taken the DeLorean.
No, I'm not ready.
They're turning 18, and you're going to give them a YouTube video, 2 minutes, where you're going to give them your best goods on productivity as they enter the world. What's in that video?
So in that video, obviously tell them I love them, tell them that they've been great kids. Hopefully that is the case. But beyond that,
That's awesome.
beyond that, it would be, to make sure that they know that, and they're always conscious about where their time is being spent, because time goes by really fast. I think that would be the first thing I would say, because I would just be surprised about how old they were already. But more than that, to make wise decisions and make sure that you just don't make decisions because it might be the coolest opportunity, to make sure that you actually spend some time thinking about what it is you're going to do, and to just make sure to always have fun with it and enjoy life. And that also, it's going to be hard sometimes. Sometimes you're going to want to give up, and to always think about that why. And so the first part, because I know when I was 18, I didn't even know what my why was, to really find that why first, because that why determines every other decision that you make. Every hour that you spend doing anything is determined by that why. So that would be the quick message. I'd probably formulate it in a little bit better terms, but and maybe have some cool graphics going on behind me or something.
Of course you would, man. It would be epic. Now, I know you're a family guy, and when I think of the idea of being a family man first and everything else second, you come to mind for that. And I really honor and respect you for that. For parents listening, what do you think should be 2 experiences that every child should have in their life?
One experience I want my kids to have is to see me do something and accomplish something that I have been struggling with.
Powerful.
And, this book is one example. One of my goals from an early age was to be there with my kids when my book is in a bookstore. And, I'm close to that now with this book. But even already my son, he has his book in his room. A couple times during the week, he asks me to bring it to him. And he always opens up the last page, because the last page is a picture of him and I, which is really cool. So I know that he knows that I wrote a book and that it means something. So that's really cool. But he also knows that I was struggling a lot with it. I even told him I'm just very frustrated with my writing. And, I'm always very honest with him and what I do sometimes, because I think it's important for him to know that failure is a part of the process. Struggling is something that Everybody does. And that's something that I wasn't brought up with. I thought everything was perfect and, or everything had to be perfect. I'd come home from school and I'd get a 95% on an exam and I'd be asked, well, what happened to the other 5%? It was, I grew up in that kind of environment, and, I'm just trying to teach my kids that struggling and failure is part of the process, but you can get through it. And so I think an example of that with me, myself in the lead to show them that would be very powerful. So that's one thing. Another thing is to experience music. By far, music has been one of the things in my life that has changed me. It changed me in so many ways, not just for like entertainment, but, even just playing music and being a part of it and having that be a part of my life. I mean, it's said that those who learn music are better at math and have better grades. And probably that's true. I don't know. I'm not necessarily 100% sure of that, but being in music has helped me connect with a lot of amazing people who obviously have a passion for something. Has led to so many other great things. So I think, just exposing children to music and allowing them to play and be creative and just use that part of their brain is going to help them in all other parts of life.
It's beautiful. Pat, I know we've kind of moved away from the book here a little bit, but I think it's so great for people that when they get to know who you are as an individual and your values, regarding life. As you know, our charity, Front Row Foundation, helps kids and adults who have a life-threatening illness to see the front row event see the live event of their dreams from the front row. And what we believe in our charity is that, that we're not just a wish-granting organization. It's not just about a day. It's about how we live our lives. No matter how many days we're given, it's how we live each of those days. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of people listening are individuals who have either fought for their life or know somebody who has. And even statistically speaking, many of us have been exposed to somebody who's fought for their life. How do you process the fact that this ride ends for everybody at some point? That tomorrow is guaranteed to nobody. And is that something you think about? And when you do, does it terrify you? Does it inspire you? How have you processed that? I
mean, yes and yes. I know that it's inevitably coming, but I also know that the more I can put into this world and serve others, the longer my message will continue to be there even after I'm gone. And so I just want to make the biggest impact that I can now. And that's through the work that I do, but also through how I raise my children. They will pass on the Flynn-ness, I guess, to the world in their own special way too. And, that's what I feel like my role is and what everybody's role is. We want to make sure that we live on, not just, in the time that we have to live, but even after that.
So what do you want to be remembered for in the end?
Well, for me in particular, and this is in my 5-year plan, I guess you could say. It's on my 4 quadrants of me exercise list. And that is by 5 years, I want to have an organization myself. And I'm very, very, I respect everything that you're doing, John, with your foundation. I think it's amazing. I want to have something that impacts people in a way like that too, because I've been doing a lot of philanthropic work now that I've found success, and it's something I've always wanted to do. And I've been doing, I've been building schools around the world and helping people learn entrepreneurship in homeless shelters and things like that. But beyond that, I really have an affinity for wanting to teach kids entrepreneurship, or at least the skills that come along with entrepreneurship, because that's going to help them in so many areas of life, whether they become an entrepreneur or not. And so teaching them those skills is something that's really important to me. So I want to have a foundation that allows kids and their parents to together learn these things so that these kids can grow up in an environment where they know they have the skills and to succeed in whatever they end up doing, and know that failure is a part of the process. And just, again, those entrepreneurial principles that we all have as entrepreneurs, just that's a part of their brain system. Because for me, I'm very lucky because my son goes to a STEM school here in San Diego. It's pretty brand new.
Yeah, talk about this. This is great. I love this.
Oh, yeah. My son goes to a STEM school, and the way they teach is different than traditional school. They teach based on real world problem solving, and it's amazing how much of an impact that's making on my son's life, and how he approaches problems now, and how he faces fears now. So just one quick example, like last year, preschool. He was in preschool last year. They were all the kids were having lunch out in the courtyard, and they had their own little area because they were preschool. It's kind of separate from the other school. And they were getting just burnt from the sun because I'm in San Diego and it's hot all the time. And the teacher, like, noticing this, changed the entire day's curriculum and turned it into, how can we solve the problem of the sun hitting us while we're eating.
Nice.
And she let the kids come up with a solution. She just asks the right questions. And, so they brainstormed all these ideas, canopies and, whatever. And they ended up coming up with an idea to create a sunshade that stands vertically. And it's kind of on an L-shaped bracing system using pipes.
Yeah.
That's what they came up with. And then so the teacher made a call out to some of the parents and said, hey, this is what the kids did today. Actually, they're using an app called Remind, which allows me to subscribe to that teacher's feed to see pictures that the teacher takes during the day of the kids and what they're up to.
So cool.
Which is awesome because now I feel like I'm in there with him during school. And when he comes home, I can be like, oh, I saw you did this today. That was awesome. Like, tell me more about it. Well, she made a call out to the parents and she was able to get a whole bunch of pipe and bed sheets donated. And they spent the next entire day just building.
That's brilliant.
And again, they came up with their own plans. These are preschool kids. And, she obviously helped them along the way. But then they made these things and they ate lunch that day with everything built. And they just were there looking and using and experiencing their own accomplishments based off a problem they just had the other day.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it's like giving me goosebumps just retelling the story because it's so amazing and this is what they do.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think that's how we should all be taught is through experience, not just reading a textbook and spitting out answers on a sheet.
So passionate about this, Pat. If you need an advocate for this mission of yours.
Oh, thank you, John.
I am so passionate about this. I heard you say somewhere the whole I can't yet.
Yeah.
And I immediately started implementing that in the house. This, you can say I can't as long as you follow it up with yet. And I thought that was just so brilliant. It's Tatiana, my wife, and I constantly talk about how we can create an environment for Tiger that is what you've been describing, this and rewarding effort, catching ourselves rewarding effort and not, this idea of not saying, oh, you're so brilliant because you tested great, but hey, we're really proud of you, how hard you worked on that particular test. And
or you're a good learner. I always say that to
you're
my
a good
son.
learner.
You are such a good learner.
Man. And I've heard our mutual friend Hal Elrod say that our outer voice becomes our child's inner voice. And I think that's just profound. So brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pat, I'm so thankful for your time. I know we probably should wrap here in the next couple of minutes. I want to ask you a couple of questions. Some of these are fun and light, just playful, just enjoyable, get to know Pat type questions. If I'm going to challenge you to answer in one word or just one sentence, gut reaction, feel free to pass.
Oh, that's going to be hard for me. Okay.
All right, you ready? So favorite meal of the day and what's on the menu?
Breakfast, eggs and bacon, and some type of green.
What's something fun that you've collected in your lifetime?
Back to the Future memorabilia.
Yeah, I was going to guess that. Who are you a raving fan of?
Elon Musk.
What's one book or documentary that you feel should be mandatory for all to experience?
The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan.
Great book. What does it mean to be fully alive?
What does it mean to be fully alive? Present.
Beautiful. What's a problem that you most want to solve in the world?
Education.
Do you have a personal mantra or a favorite quote?
Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Henry Ford.
What's the next place that you'd most want to travel to?
Asia.
And if you had to pick one person to switch brains with for a day, who would it be?
Elon Musk again.
And why?
Because he is just this limitless, he thinks everything is possible.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what he's been able to do because of that.
Yeah,
I mean, he wants to colonize Mars,
yeah.
which is insane, but also he's making it possible.
Yeah,
and
totally.
he's taking it one step at a time, one thing at a time.
Yeah. Have you seen, by the way, speaking of big thinking, have you seen the documentary Visioneer? Is it Visioneer? This is the Peter Diamandis.
Oh, I know Peter. I don't know him, but I know of him very well.
That's so
he's in
great.
that world for sure.
Check that out. Hal just sent that to me. Visioneer, I think it's called. Yeah, Visioneer. Yeah, brilliant. And what live event would you most want to see front row?
That's an amazing question.
Pat, you said that twice on the show. That's my favorite thing to hear.
Oh, dude, you're a great interview. Actually, I'm actually having a really good interview. I mean, this is great. Does it have to be business related or could it be?
No, anything. I mean, it could be literally it could be the circus. It could be, Disney on Ice with your kids. It could be anything. It could be a concert, sporting event.
Yeah, it would likely be a John Legend concert.
Oh, that's great. Beautiful. Pat, I want to say thanks. is there anything else that we left out? Just that parting words for our audience? Anything you want to share? A request, a challenge, an invite, anything?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've learned over time is that, I'm kind of weird. And I think we're all weird in our own special way. And one time my son came home from school. This was, again, in preschool. And he came home and he was like, Daddy, so-and-so called me weird today. And he was very upset by it.
Yeah.
But my response was, well, you are weird. And people hear this story and they're like, what? You're like, call child abuse hotline or something. No, but I told him, dude, you are weird. And you know why that's great? Because that's what makes you special. You don't want to be like everybody else. What makes you weird makes you unique. And that's how you're going to stand out in this world. And he now knows that. And, he's okay with being different. And I think what makes us different is what helps us in whatever we choose to do. And so embrace your weird is my message.
Can be a part of your unfair advantage, yeah?
Yep.
Oh, that's great. Pat, where do people go find more of you?
You can find me at smartpassiveincome.com. You can also hit me up at Pat Flynn on Twitter, Instagram, Periscope, most other platforms.
Pat, I want to say thank you, man. I really appreciate your time. I know how valuable it is. Our entire Front Row community is grateful for you. If they were here, they would be giving you a standing ovation. And I also want to tell you, as I've shared with you before we even started this show, that I genuinely feel in my heart, man, that you are leaving this world better than how you found it in a huge way. You are making a difference in such a way that I feel that you're creating a community that is going to embrace my children. And so I deeply am appreciative of you leaving such a positive mark on the world. When somebody has power, I am so happy to see that they're the good guy who's got the money and the power and the influence. Your transparency, your authenticity, your love, your desire to be a family man, how much you talk about driving your kids to school. And this inspires me deeply. And I know that we are new friends, but from afar, I've been observing, watching, and appreciating, and you've been impacting my life in a big way. And so thank you for that. I appreciate your time. I can't wait to chat again down the road, and I just wish you all the best. Everybody go pick up a copy of Will It Fly? It's outstanding. Make sure to do the online course with it. And Pat, we'll just continue to follow you and just be part of your journey.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you to the Front Row. I appreciate you guys.
All right. Take care. Well, that's it for today. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Make sure to check out smartpassiveincome.com. Make sure to go to Amazon and pick up a copy of Will It Fly? In fact, get 2 copies and share one with a friend. Speaking of sharing, ask yourself who would benefit from listening to this episode and pass it along. Give the gift of all of Pat Flynn's wisdom. Also, check out Pat's Encore episode in just a couple of days. This is a short 10-minute show that has questions from you, the community, directly to our guest. Now, if you want to ask questions down the road, go to frontrowfriends.com and join our free Facebook group where you can share value, ask for support, join a group of like-minded people in pursuit of a front row life. That's it for now. Can't wait to have you back again on the next show. Keep living your life in the front row. Take care, everybody.
That's all for this episode of the Front Row Factor. To discover more simple and effective ways to lead a fearless front row life, please visit frontrowfactor.com and subscribe to John's 4 Minutes in the Front Row, where he shares quick stories from real-life experiences. Thanks again for joining us today. We hope our show inspires you to live big, give big, and experience life to the fullest. See you next time on the Front Row Factor.